of years back, this would have been unthinkable. Oh yes, I mean, when you think about it, he was one of the most bankable stars at the box office, the golden boy of Hollywood. This was fresh out from, of course, a very successful TV series called ER, in which he played the dishy doctor. But it looks like he might need to now perform some ER on his latest Broadway effort. Let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you, chums. Thank you so much as ever for taking the time out to join me. Nice to have your company. I don't know about you, but I'm very selective about what I now go and see because, let's be honest, it's a very expensive game theatre. And I often, I would pass this out to you as a bit of advice. If you are coming to the United Kingdom, you are travelling around, I might suggest, because it's a lot cheaper, to go and see any production outside of London because seemingly the productions are more or less just the same, but a fraction of the price. Plus the fact you get to see some wonderful areas and some wonderful theatres. Maybe a matinee might suit you better. I mean, when you look at the prices on Broadway and over here in London, you kind of think, truly, who can afford to go? But of course, Broadway was banking on the fact that this Hollywood stardust, that's right, thank you and good night, a story that apparently George Clooney put together himself, and it was an original movie. So he decided to have a crack at this, right, on Broadway, making his Broadway debut. He thought this would work. But the bigger problem that you have is it's not really about the name. And as I've told you before, the bigger problem also is if you alienate the audience, and that's truly what George Clooney has now gone and done. The problem for George is that he needs a lot of bums on seats to cover his very hefty, some say, Broadway fee. And it's not cheap to go and see George Clooney. They've done lots of things, in fact, to try and entice people in, including this very lengthy chat with CBS 60 Minutes. Well, you might have well saved your time there, George, because not many people are watching CBS or 60 Minutes at all at the moment. But in this particular interview, he tried to point out exactly why his political stance, well, the reason why he did it. Now, as I've said to you before, I report impartially on both sides. And as many people know, I've pointed out time and time again, if you're in the public eye and you need that audience to come along and see your product, your show, whatever, you should remain impartial. But George literally came out of the bat for the former president of the United States, President Joe Biden. And even though many people suggest that Mr. Biden wasn't well enough to continue in the role, George literally came out and told the world he was in fighting spirits and better than he'd ever been. Clearly lying, allegedly. Clearly, of course, a better actor than we had him down for. But now this is having very severe repercussions, so he decided that he needed to go on telly and explain the plot. Has this really helped the box office? No. Now, the other situation is, apparently, he now speaks to the audience at the end of the play, explaining some, political actions, etc. Now, if there was ever a way to kill something off at the end, nobody goes to the theatre to see a Hollywood star, one that they may have admired, even on the small screen, to be lectured at and hectored at. You go because you normally can't quite believe you're in the same building as them, you want to see if they can really act, and more importantly, let's be blunt, ladies, George is gorgeous and a good looker. And the point is, you went there probably because you liked him in ER. So seemingly he's not very happy with lying to the greater public about how well President Biden was. And then, of course, he backtracked on that 60 Minutes to basically say he wasn't totally across it. So why say it in the first place? So consequently now, his Broadway debut is sort of mirrored in, well, problems. The biggest problem, of course, is not many people are going to put their posterior on a seat to see ER George. Now, would this tempt you back into the theatre? Neil Shaw in the very heart of London.